Hello there, movie flick pickers and podcast listeners. This is the Pic-a-Flic podcast, a show, like others, that covers reviews for movies and TV, some old and some new. Somehow, by the hair of our chinny chin chins, we made it to the end of the year. You know what that means. Time for the yearly Christmas holiday movie season of reviews. But I'm not kicking off the month with holiday content just yet. I decided to start off with a film that has been sitting in my watch list, not only for the fact that I was curious about it, but one of my favorite music groups had a hand in the score. If you couldn't tell by the title of this episode, that film is none other than Flash Gordon. Before we dive in, I often like to throw in some quick factoids and information for reviews of older content, so here's the facts. Flash Gordon started as a comic book series in the 1930s under the creation of cartoonist Alex Raymond, and would soon get adapted in the form of 3 serial films, which is basically a series of episodic chapters shown in a feature-length form. This was pretty prolific for the time period, as it was the first of its kind to be done within the sci-fi genre. The comic itself would continue chugging along with new material, even as creator Raymond stepped away from the project to join the Marines in 1944, though it would be decades before another film adaptation would come around. In fact, it took so long that there was a short-lived television series that preceded it in the mid-50s. Eventually, producer Dino De Laurentiis, who had a hand back in such projects as Danger, Diabolique, and the Jane Fonda-led Barbarella, expressed interest in making a Flash Gordon film and ultimately went through several directors in the process. Firstly, there was 4-time Oscar-winning Italian filmmaker Federico Fellini, who optioned the rights but ultimately dropped out of the project. Then, there was some guy named George Lucas, who showed interest, but due to failing to obtain the rights from De Laurentiis, abandoned the project to work on some flick called Star Wars. I don't think that went anywhere though. The following 2 directors attached were big fans of the original Flash Gordon comics, but ultimately dropped out for varying reasons. Nicholas Roeg abandoned ship due to De Laurentiis not approving of his work-in-progress material, while Sergio Leone, the filmmaker behind some of Clint Eastwood's acclaimed movies of the 60s, dropped out because the director didn't consider the script faithful to the originated source material. The director's chair would finally be filled by Mike Hodges, who helmed such projects as Get Carter, starring future AI test mechanism Michael Caine, and The Terminal Man with George Segal. Meanwhile, the script was written by Lorenzo Sample Jr., who had a hand in developing the 60s Batman series, with some of his campy themes transferring over to the Flash project. According to Sample in a later interview, De Laurentiis wanted to make Flash Gordon humorous. At the time, I thought this was a possible way to go, but in hindsight, I realized it was a terrible mistake. We kept fiddling around with the script, trying to decide whether to be funny or realistic. That was a catastrophic thing to do with so much money involved. I never thought the character of Flash in the script was particularly good, but there was no pressure to make it any better. Filming for Flash took place in the UK, even scenes that are set in the US of A under a reported budget of $20 million. Remember that soundtrack that I brought up earlier? Well, that's what made me aware of this film's existence more over a decade ago. British rock quartet Queen worked the score with assistance from film composer Howard Blake, and interestingly enough, De Laurentiis didn't initially know who they were. According to sources, when the meeting was arranged, the producer was overheard asking the question,
Who are the Queens?
My sincerest apologies for the bloated Italian accents, which kinda sounds French. I would have killed it in House of Gucci, no doubt. Casting for the titular role would settle on actor Sam J. Jones, who was discovered by De Laurentiis' mother-in-law when she watched an episode of all programs, The Dating Game? Now here's something interesting to note. Jones apparently beat out such actors as Kurt Russell and Arnold Schwarzenegger for the gig. And while it was easy for Jones to take on the part, it wasn't so easy during the final stretch, as a dispute due to creative differences between him and Mr. De Laurentiis led to Jones abruptly leaving the project and never returned for post-production ADR. And as a result of this, some of Flash's lines had to be dubbed over by another actor. Eventually, the film would be released on December the 5th, 1980 in the US, and less than a week later on the 11th in the UK. Box office returns were promising in England and Italy, but elsewhere, the movie rather floundered in other markets. Despite this, the film would open at number 1 at the American box office and eventually grossed over $27 million stateside. Meanwhile, critical reception was mixed. The New Yorker threw praise towards director Mike Hodges for getting right to comic strip pacing and sensibility, while Roger Ebert stated, "It's fun to see a space opera film done with energy and love without the pseudo-meaningful apparatus of the Force and tricky power. Is it fun? Yeah, sort of, it is." Not so great reviews came from the likes of the Monthly Film Bulletin, who called the film an expensively irrelevant gloss on the sources, and the Irish Times, who referred to it as
a hodgepodge The humor is not very funny and much of the serious element is hilarious, which makes it an unsatisfying film.
Even accolades for the film were mixed, yielding 3 Saturn Award nominations, including Best Sci-Fi Film, and 3 BAFTA Award nominations, including Best Costume Design and Best Film Music for Queen and Blake. But Sam Jones received nominations for Worst Actor at both the Razzie Awards and the Stinker's Bad Movie Awards. Despite this, the movie would become a beloved cult classic among the sci-fi community, and rightly so, I'd say. But enough of that, let's take a look into the events of Flash Gordon. Spoilers are obviously going to happen. So, who is Flash Gordon, you may wonder? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, he's... well, yes, but before that, just like any other hero, Flash's role in life was simple yet hard work. He's a star quarterback of the New York Jets. Well, you gotta start somewhere. During a flight, he meets a sweethearted travel agent named Dale, played by Melody Anderson, and their conversation is cut abruptly by a meteorite which somehow takes out the pilots. Flash takes over and, with the assistance of Dale, is able to land into this mysterious greenhouse. Not a very inspired start for a man who's supposedly king of the impossible, but I digress. The owner of this greenhouse is one Dr. Hans Zarkov, played by Topol, a mad scientist who has just built a rocket ship to investigate a disturbance from space.
What do you find? The moon out of orbit?
By more than 12 degrees. This must be a mistake.
That's no mistake. It's an attack. I've been right all these years. Fragments of moon rock. Our moon is being subjected to some enormous force from outer space. A kind of energy beam.
His assistant, fearful of the mission, has abandoned him, so the doctor decides to lure Flash and Dale in on his journey. In a rather goofy fashion, might I add. Popping folks in the head with a gun is not as effective as a punch, something that surely hasn't been a thought on either character's minds. But against all odds, the trio arrives in the planet of Mongo. Now, this place isn't your average planet. There's aliens, goblins, and burly hawkmen. Yet the overall aesthetic and design is absolutely beautiful and very 80s. Upon arrival, our fearless heroes are taken prisoner in Mingo City, where they are taken to the source of Earth's recent issues, the overlord of the function, the preening, scheming, leather-clad Ming the Merciless, played by Max von Sydow. Lord Baldy McBalderson happens to be preoccupied with neighboring legions, one of whom are expressing their concerns and frustrations over his tyrannical rule, which costs them their life. Flash's mumbled ramblings over the bald man catches the attention of one of his floating robot devices, and the trio forcibly takes center stage. Dale immediately catches the eye of Ming and, with the power of his fancy smashy ring, puts her under a brief spell and orders his minions to take her away for his pleasure. Flash rebels against this, battling Ming's goons, but a shaky throw knocks him unconscious. The protagonist's biggest move so far is overshadowed by an incomplete pass. Such is the life of a New York Jets quarterback. Once again, you gotta start somewhere. Ming demands that Flash is executed via gas chamber, and Dr. Zarkov's mind is forcibly to be reprogrammed. But on the bright side, the merciless bald man is a half-considerate antagonist. He did give Flash a very fancy tombstone, whereas other villains would have taken out their ops, disposed of their remains, and moved on to the next one. Surely his next move will also be just as considerate. Later, Flash is revived by Ming's daughter, the ever so beautiful Princess Aura, played by Ornella Muti. Downboy, who takes a romantic liking to Flash the second he entered her father's place. The princess was able to convince a smitten doctor to resuscitate Flash with the power of a kiss, and flies him over to the planet of Arborea to keep him hidden under low. Freaked out flirting ensues between the two.
Your left hand controls direction. Right does the altitude. And use your fingers too this time. Gently, darling. It's extremely sensitive. Like me.
It should have been me, not him! It's not fair!
Back in Planet Mongo, Dr. Zarkov's memories are seemingly removed by General Clytus, played by Peter Wingard, Ming's sidekick who oversees the police unit. This guy's mask could make him a distant uncle of the late great MF Doom. Elsewhere in Ming's suite, Dell is trapped while the servant passes her a mythical green potion to make her intimacy with Baltimore amenable. Yeah, not very considerate of you, Mr. Ming Cosby. However, Dell is able to get a call from Flash to the power of telepathic communication, which is a courtesy of a down bad aura. Flash is able to convince Dell to escape Ming's bedroom quarters, but not without some more goofy tricking around his bodyguards. She eventually catches up with Zarkov, who was initially ordered by Clytus to interview in her rebellious act, but he reveals that his mind was actually able to overpower the brainwashing process.
As I was going under, I started to recite Shakespeare, the Talmud, the formulas of Einstein, anything I could remember, even a song from the Beatles. It armored me, girl. They couldn't wipe those things away. You can't beat the human spirit.
However, the duo are ultimately captured by a group of Hawkmen and taken away. Eventually, Flash and Aura touch down in Arborea Nation, where the princess attempts to seduce the Planet Swall leader, Prince Baron, played by Timothy Dalton, which backfires when he discovers Flash as the heartwarming gift. The prince begrudgingly agrees not to off Flash to appease his beloved Aura, but the second she leaves, Flash is put through a set of rigorous tasks, such as escaping a poisonous swamp and playing a game where both parties stick their hand inside his tree stump, in hopes that they aren't stung by a poisonous creature. Flash successfully deceives Prince Baron by faking a plea to alleviate his fake injury and taking a sword in the process. The prince tails after Gordon, and even saves him from another murky trap in the process, but both are captured by the Hawkmen. And now I introduce to you the Hawk leader, Prince Vultan, played by Brian Blessed, a very boisterous and scenery-chewing individual who gets off on cruel forms of entertainment. He also has the best reaction out of anyone in this movie after discovering Flash is still alive.
Gordon's alive!
A brief reunion between Flash and Dell is interrupted by the Vultan leader, who forces Flash and Baron to partake in a death match.
Moments later,
Flash gets the upper hand, and just as Baron is about to fall into a deep abyss of death, Flash saves him and finally gets the prince's gratitude and assistance in overthrowing Ming. Soon after, General Clytus arrives, threatening everyone involved in going against the Bald Man, but Flash and Baron's double team up ends up with the Middleman facing a goofy, yet gratuitous death. Before his demise, the general left behind a chaotic shit show over in Mingo City. Earlier, he overheard Zarkov and Dale's conversation about Flash's whereabouts, and received the okay from Ming to properly shake down the person responsible in assisting in Gordon's escape. Upon a return, Aura starts to experience a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day that even Alexander wouldn't want to experience. Clytus and his fellow General Kala, played by Mariangelo Bellato, suspect Aura's involvement quickly and proceed to torture her for details. That entire sequence is suspiciously kinky, to say the least. It's a freaky nation, that Mingo City. After her torture, she's set to be banished to a nice planet after her father successfully marries Dale. Back in Hawkland, or Sky City, Prince Vultan fears nothing but the worst from the merciless Bald Man and escapes from the city, leaving Flash and company behind. Soon after, Ming arrives, forcibly boarding Dale, Zarkov, and Baron a flight back to Mingo City for his wedding, where the latter two will face repercussions for their actions. Notice how I mentioned everyone but Flash. It appears that an impressed Ming has offered him an ultimatum. Either oversee a new kingdom where its inhabitants, Earthlings, are boundless slaves to Flash's rule, or death. Flash refuses the first offer, so Ming orders his henchmen to destroy the Sky City, with Gordon to remain inside.
You really prefer death to a kingdom? I'm disappointed. I'd much rather see you on my side than scattered into atoms. But as you wish.
However, Flash is able to escape via rocket cycle as the epic climax begins. Now, how else would an epic final act of such a film like Flash Gordon conclude? Lasers, lasers, and more lasers. With fighting, of course. Flash links up with Prince Vultan to launch an attack on Mingo City, while General Kala launches a counterattack by sending over War Rocket Ajax. However, the rocket is taken over and destroyed by the Hawkmen, who engages in an intense battle with Ming's police unit as General Kala sets up a lightning defense shield, which is referred to as a tribute to Ming towards the concerned wedding guests. Meanwhile, Princess Aura is able to overtake their trapped position and freeze Baron and Zarkov, a very noble move. Flash and Vulcan figure out that the only method of breaking through the defense shield is flying the Ajax rocket through it, practically a suicide mission. Vulcan is understandably shaken by the fate of death and makes an exit, expecting Flash to join him. However, the heroic lad offers to stick behind and, after being committed by Vulcan for his valiant efforts, is left alone as the countdown for Earth's desecration ticks near. Back in Mingo City, the wedding of Ming and Dill has begun. While the wedding is running smoothly up top, down below is chaos everywhere. Baron Zarkov challenges General Kala in a match, with the duo ultimately winning out, while Baron manages to take down Ming's goons and turns off the defense shield, leading the Ajax machine to crash right into the hall where the wedding takes place, impaling an unsuspecting Ming. Flash attempts to reason with the evil overlord one last time, so long as he calls off eviscerating planet Earth. Unfortunately, Ming being Ming refuses to comply and attempts to take out Flash with his ring, but to no avail, so he uses it on himself, and is vaporized on the spot, thus ending his tyrannical reign that we know of. How does Flash react to saving the day?
Long live Flash! You've saved your Earth. Have a nice day. Yeah!
And that's how you improv a scene that you don't know how to finish, goddammit. Baron is declared the new leader of Manga, while Vulcan is announced as the new general of the planet's armies. The newly minted leader invites Flash, Dale, and Zarkov to stick behind as Earth's vortex needs some healing post Ming's vaporized fate.
We certainly invite you all to stay. What do you think?
I'm a New York City girl. It's a little too quiet around here for me.
Now I'm curious, did these events take place near an upcoming football season? Because if so, Flash's job on the Jets would be cooked, right? Oh well, all's well that ends well, and that's the movie. Or is it? A shot of Ming's ring can be seen and is picked up by an unseen character as his menacing laugh can be heard in the background with the words "The End?" on screen. So did Ming the Merciless pull a Thanos? Perhaps, but due to the movie's lack of box office returns, we were robbed of a sequel to see where he really ran off to in the grand scheme of things.
God damn it!
In conclusion, did yours truly the Western Wonder enjoy Flash Gordon upon watching it in full for the first time? Well, absolutely. I think that the strongest points of the movie lie within the set design and the costumes. For the time period, as well as the budget, the crew behind this did a tremendous job making this world of Flash replicate the comic books, and everything is beautiful to look at here. And granted, some of the background shots were made with green screens in a dream, but at least there wasn't any usage of CGI because it definitely would have been done that way in present times. Then there's the costumes. Lots of shiny jackets, hats, and masks. And now it's a life goal of mine that, if I were to throw a Halloween party, I would want to make the costumes Flash Gordon themed. Big props go out to Oscar-winning costume designer Danilo Donati for his work on everyone's fits. The performances are to be expected from an unserious B movie. Sam J. Jones has the buff protagonist chops to play the role of Flash, but I do wonder what the final cut would have looked like if the producers landed on Kurt Russell or Arnold Schwarzenegger instead. Also, it still cracks me up that a quarterback from the New York Jets did all of this. Could you imagine if the writers remained comic book accurate and kept Flash's original gig intact? A polo player? Actually, mystical horses would have been a welcome addition to the unhinged madness. My personal standouts and MVPs here will be the aforementioned stars Max Van Sydow as Ming, Brian Blessed as Prince Vulcan, and Peter Wyngarde as General Clytus. Of course, the first two provide stellar scene-stealing work and adds to the campy, over-the-top atmosphere of the film. But it's the atypical villainous line deliveries of Clytus that also stands out, and he's a great companion to the ever-bald Ming. On the Pic-a-Flic rating scale out of 5 stars, or 5 popcorn buckets, Flash Gordon gets a solid 3.5 popcorn buckets. This was a pretty fun watch, I have to say. Great costumes, great set designs, colors, and of course a kicking soundtrack from Queen give this cult classic a punch of grandeur. So much so that even the late Queen Elizabeth enjoyed it, so that should mean something, right? I highly recommend you folks check it out if campy sci-fi joints are your cup of tea. And that about does it for this episode. Coming up next, The Emperor's New Groove, one of my personal favorite Disney movies. And down the line, the show will be covering Christmas classics such as Home Alone, celebrating its 35th anniversary, and the animated reworking of the suspiciously true crime-pilled tune Grandma Got Ran Over by a Reindeer. stay tuned for these drops. But until then, if you want to be in the know for when these new episodes are out, make sure you subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to said shows, and tell a friend to tell another friend who knows another friend down the road to check out the pod. All support and feedback is always appreciated. If you're listening on YouTube and enjoyed this episode, make sure you smash the like button, comment, subscribe, yada yada, you know the drill. And if you want to follow the show on social media, we can be found on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok under the username handle at Pic-a-Flic Pod. That is at PICAFLICPOD. If review logging is your thing, then you may be familiar with Letterboxd, where you can also find non-audio exclusive reviews that do under the aforementioned Pic-a-Flic Pod username handle. So be sure to follow me there if you use that platform. Once again, thank you all for tuning in as always, and until the next one, this is the Western Wonder signing out. Toodles!
Bye, have a great time.